More often than not, video games are very, very silly things. That's part of what I've always loved about them. You know what else is usually silly? Crossovers. Smashing two franchises or popular characters otherwise unrelated to one another together rarely results in the best of either world, but sometimes the pieces all line up and you get some special bit of unique weirdness that can be appreciated, maybe even loved in its own right. And since video games generally don't have to worry about things like getting the original actors or being taken remotely seriously on a narrative level, they've proved very nearly the perfect media to pull crossovers off, both for properties that originated in games and those ported in from elsewhere. I'm the Game OverThinker, and these are the top 10 best video game crossovers of all time. Number 10, Mario and Sonic Olympics. It's a party game based loosely around Olympic events as licensed tie-ins, starring a bunch of characters who it turns out look a lot more right together than you'd think. On its own, neither the original nor any of the subsequent installments would be considered a major high point in either franchise, those are the facts. But on the other hand, holy shit, what a moment it was to see Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog sharing a game. Maybe you had to be there in the 90s to watch it play out, but back in the day, Nintendo and Sega wasn't just a rivalry, it was a war. And just the idea, even long after Sega had ceased to be part of the console scene and had been releasing games for Nintendo platforms for years, of the two enemy mascots being teamed up in any meaningful way just felt utterly absurd. Yes, it was going to happen eventually, so whatever project wound up getting across the finish line first was always going to get the history medal, but this is the one that got there, and seeing it actually exist was a mind-blowing experience. Number 9, Alien vs. Predator Arcade. Now, look, as psyched as we all got seeing a xenomorph skull in the trophy room in Predator 2, by now the evidence is pretty clear that actually realizing Alien vs. Predator is as dumb an idea as making more Alien movies after 2 was. But dumb ideas are to video games what a lump of clay was to Michelangelo, and AVP gave players a memorable experience that reveled in comic book-inspired gory absurdity and shook up the brawler formula with clever enemy variations and a tough but fair challenge curve. How cool is this game? Schwarzenegger's Dutch Schaefer returning to the franchise sort of as a cyborg marine with a robot arm is the least interesting of the 4 player characters, which also includes 2 different Predators and a lady ninja because video games. Sure, reducing the xenomorphs to just another variety pack of disposable mooks kind of sucks some of the menace out of one of cinema's greatest monsters, but since we now know they're actually just some android dorks' pet sea monkeys, that's kind of out the window anyway. And unlike Alien Covenant, Alien vs. Predator will still be memorable a year from now. Number 8, Robocop vs. Terminator on the Genesis. Speaking of which, how come pretty much everyone recognized right off the bat and accepted that Robocop vs. Terminator was a good idea for some cheesy comic books and a couple video games, but didn't spend decades thinking it should be an actual movie like we did with Alien and Predator? Was it the fact that we knew they'd never get Schwarzenegger and Peter Weller back, but the Alien and Predator are just dudes in rubber suits, so it seemed more plausible? I guess we'll never know. Anyway, it's a winning premise for a couple hours of mostly mindless action, complete with a bonkers premise about Skynet actually being made out of Robocop parts or something. The winner in the bunch was the Genesis version, because you could turn on the violent mode, and this is one crossover that you really want to be bloody as hell. In fact, this was the version that won Electronic Gaming Monthly's Bloodiest Game of the Year award in 1993, so that's pretty cool. Number 7, Battletoads and Double Dragon on the Super Nintendo. Now this is my kind of video game crossover. I love both franchises, they made a good game out of it, and smashing these particular 2 worlds together makes absolutely zero sense, which, because video games, just makes it more fun. Hell, on balance, it might actually be the best Battletoads game, though not the best Double Dragon game. Originally released for the NES, where it was legitimately one of the top-tier late-arriving titles for the old warhorse, the latter ports to Super Nintendo, Genesis, and Game Boy were pretty much all good, but the SNES version had by far the superior graphics, and all things being equal, that's the edge here. It's a real shame they didn't do more than one of these, but Double Dragon had been on the way out for a while, and despite the way people talk about it today, the Battletoads never really caught on all that big. But Battletoads and Double Dragon together, it was a match made in heaven. Number 6, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. Pour one out for Alex Kidd, the perfectly good enough Sega mascot who never quite got to be their Mario, and instead of getting to compete when the bosses jumped to 16 bits, instead got replaced by punk rock Mickey Mouse. At least he'll always have Shinobi World, which drops the erstwhile elf, hobbit, boy, whatever the hell Alex Kidd was supposed to be, into a zany cartoon spoof of Sega's legendary Shinobi series, complete with caricatures of the most famous villains and wacky ninja action gameplay very different from the typical Alex Kidd game. Before Sega evened the odds with the Genesis, the Master System owners in the age of the NES often felt like members of a secret club with their own unique language and customs. In that respect, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World was like a love letter from Sega to their most loyal fans, cramming 2 of their favorite worlds together into one big blowout. Number 5, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Cross-Generation of Heroes. Yeah, we all know the other Capcom vs. game is coming up later. Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is one nutty piece of work, not only mixing what is even for a Capcom vs. game an eclectic lineup of fighters with a bevy of classic Tatsunoko characters, the bulk of whom were overwhelmingly unknown outside their native Japan, but also dropping in a just different enough combo system with separate specialized controls exclusively for the game's heavily touted Wii release. Obviously, it was going to mean more or less to you depending on your attachment to the dizzying array of mismatched characters and franchises all swirled together in this nonsense, but even if you've never heard of these people, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is a compulsively playable head trip that stands out as the embodiment of think again to anyone who thinks they've absorbed all the fighting genre has to offer. Plus, hey, you finally got to play as Roll in something again. Number 4. Super Smash Bros. Wii U. Will we ever settle whether or not Smash Bros. Is the most or least balanced fighting game series ever developed? Probably not. But even if you're not good at it, the pure spectacle of Nintendo literally letting you treat the whole damn menagerie like a toy box full of especially durable action figures for the most epic crossover battle ever is the stuff video game fever dreams are made of. Given that, the Smash Bros. Games probably didn't even need to be good to be popular, so in many ways, the idea of devoting massive creative manpower and pushing the creative muscles of the great Masahiro Sakurai to their breaking point in service of polishing to perfection out of a property other developers would write off as half-assed easy money is somehow even more a pure distillation of the Nintendo essence than the game itself. There have been many Smash Bros. Games over the years, and everyone has their favorite, but for my money, the most recent incarnation for the Wii U, which had the niftiest roster and improved online play, eventually wins out. On the other hand, well, we'll talk about that in just a bit. Number 3. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. X-Men vs. Street Fighter blew our minds just by existing. The first Marvel vs. Capcom blew them all over again. But it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that set the standard by which all other crossover fighters would forever be judged. The roster, the music, the bold, unifying art aesthetic, that unforgettably unique atmosphere mixing comics and games, east and west, into something wholly new that took you for a ride that some dedicated players stayed on forever. Sure, maybe it had never crossed your mind to ask whether Captain Commando, Strider, and Baby Bonnie Hood could defeat Omega Red, Spiral, and Captain America, but after just a few playthroughs, how could you think about anything else? Number 2. Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the Subspace Emissary. A game within a game is still a game and gets to be judged on its own merits. My list, my rules. Frankly, it's just more honest than putting 2 separate Smash Bros. Titles on here, which I absolutely could have done. Most fighting games that opt to put a story mode on the single-player campaign treat it as an afterthought, but for Brawl, somebody at Nintendo was thinking, why not make a whole gigantic other game and basically give it away? The fact is, yes, Subspace Emissary is a giant, sprawling Kirby game with a cast of guest stars, but even if there was something wrong with that, it'd be negated by doing almost better than any other crossover the entire point of doing a crossover, playing out crazy elaborate scenarios for the mixed up cast of non-compatible characters to crash against each other. Yeah, you're basically playing Kirby levels in order to unlock a succession of elaborate Nintendo fan service cutscenes, but oh, what cutscenes they are. Samus rescuing Pikachu from the ship, Ness and Lucas versus Wario in the abandoned zoo, Bowser's army and probably coming to a rescue, Mario and Link almost killing each other, Diddy Kong going all John Woo, Sheik punching out an R-Wing, and Princess freaking Peach shutting down a war zone with a tea party. The Subspace Emissary is one of gaming's great absurdist pop art masterworks, and there's only one crossover game that can possibly overshadow it on a list like this. Number 1. Kingdom Hearts. An action RPG with Mickey and the gang done up all Square style would honestly have been cool enough. An entire Disney shared universe game put together by the best in the business at the kind of emotionally hyperbolic fan service that such an idea would entail, too much to hope for. But a massive story-driven epic fusing beloved Square heroes with the deepest depths of the Disney arcana and a rich internal mythology of its own, plus compelling original characters all swirled together into unique new creations somehow even greater than the sum of its extremely substantial parts. I mean, wow. Think about all that for a minute. Kingdom Hearts happened at exactly the first and last moment in time when it could have happened, and became one of the defining works of early 21st century gaming. Who could have ever guessed that there were gaping empty spaces in the soul of the medium itself shaped exactly like fantasy-armored Goofy and Donald Duck? It was never for everyone and never meant to be, but Kingdom Hearts became the ultimate cult classic for an entire generation by effectively inventing an aesthetic language all its own and using it to spin something like the ultimate evolution of fanfiction's anarchic emotional core, which I guess is a very Kingdom Hearts way of saying that Kingdom Hearts is the best video game crossover of all time. And that's the list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell us about it in the comments and suggest other lists you might like to see. Remember to like, subscribe, share with all your friends, and please consider donating to the Movie Bob Patreon to support this and other series like it. Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is Movie Bob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on Geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of Geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest Movie Bob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, Movie Bob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future Movie Bob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another Movie Bob production.